on the envelope said Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago. So then why am I looking for her?
You loved her, didn't you? Me. You. We're all the same.
I'm not like you.
Are you afraid?
Silent Hill 2 Remake Review. A remake worthy of the Silent Hill name.
Run!
Konami and Silent Hill are back with a bang in Silent Hill 2 Remake. Bloober's creation is a good remake, a horror masterpiece, and a video game worthy of praise. When the Silent Hill 2 remake was first announced and Bloober Studios was named as the developer, fans of the series were right to be a little worried. While Bloober has some good games under their belt, Silent Hill 2 is still one of the most unique horror games ever made, and it felt like a bit of a big project for the studio. However, having spent about 20 hours with James Sunderland in the suffocating atmosphere of this cursed city, I can safely say that Bloober has done a great job. My first encounter with Silent Hill 2 dates back to about 20 years ago, when, excited about the end of exams and the beginning of vacation, I bought the game disc and entered its terrifying world without any background. Even for me, who had a limited knowledge of video games, and my only experience with horror works was summarized in a few versions of Resident Evil, it was clear that Silent Hill 2 was a different work. Of course, I do not intend to compare the games with each other, and many people know how much I am fascinated by Resident Evil, especially the classic ones. But Silent Hill had a completely different kind of fear. Here, the scariest aspect of the game was not its strange enemies, nor was there any momentary scares. Konami's horror had a constant feeling and seemed to penetrate beyond the skin and bones, somewhere deep in the brain and psyche of the audience. This was exactly the quality that I did not expect the remake to be able to instill, but the truth is, in the face of the Silent Hill 2 remake, I still felt like that same young teenager, stalked by a skull with a terrifying sword. It's here, and this true sense of psychological terror in Silent Hill, that Bloober achieves his greatest achievement in creating this remake. In Silent Hill 2, we follow James Sunderland, a man who, after receiving information and hoping to find his wife, Mary, has set off for the cursed town of Silent Hill. I don't even intend to spoil the information that has been shown many times in the game's trailers, but the first half hour of the game is enough to know that something, and perhaps even more than one thing, is not right in this story, and James' journey will not be a very pleasant experience. One of Bloober's most valuable achievements in the remake of Silent Hill 2 is its incredible fidelity to the events and story of the original. Silent Hill 2's story, after all these years, still has everything it takes to make a horror game stand out, and the good news is that these elements have been carried over to the remake with a commitment similar to the passion of a longtime fan, and are rendered even more impressively and in greater detail using today's more powerful hardware. The game's story has many strengths. First of all, it is the suspense and twists that keep the audience waiting throughout the narrative. Silent Hill 2 has a great interest in challenging the mind of its audience and, in parallel, the character James himself. For this reason, you will soon suspect why some events happen, and just like the light at the end of a tunnel, the game will gradually pull you in trying to find the answers to these questions. This creates a very powerful sense of suspense that does not let up until the last moment, and other things such as strange characters complement it. The familiar characters of Silent Hill 2, with the same mysterious and special characterization, are back in the remake. Thanks to the more cinematic cutscenes and the high-quality voice acting of these characters, their presence seems even more prominent. Each of these characters adds a question mark to the countless questions gamers have in the world of Silent Hill 2, and the art of the game's narrative team shows its place where these questions are gradually answered in an ideal way. You will definitely ask yourself many times during the game experience why a certain character should be present in such a strange and cursed city, But all of these people are pieces of the game's final storytelling puzzle that will be very neatly and systematically placed in their final place. This also applies to the character of Pyramid Head, and we are still faced with one of the most iconic and terrifying enemies in the history of horror games. These factors combine to make Silent Hill 2 a coherent, mysterious, and deeply immersive experience, whether you've played the original or not. For the former, the remake is a valuable reimagining of an unforgettable image in a retouched and recolored form, and for the latter, it's an adventure filled with unpredictable events and crazy mysteries. Bloober has also added new endings to the game that are definitely worth experiencing and don't hurt it. Before the release of Silent Hill 2, it was announced that Bloober had added a relatively large amount of new content to the game, and this was a bit of a concern, whether this new content would be up to the name of the game or not. If the original version of the game was an almost 8-hour experience, the remake version will keep you engaged for at least 15 hours and of course, it is worth experiencing again after that. But the new items added are not at all superfluous and do not even feel like filler, and the developers have never tried to simply make the game longer. Rather, by properly understanding the overall process of Silent Hill 2, they have simply presented the same items in a more extensive and detailed way. Silent Hill 2's gameplay can be divided into 3 main pillars: exploration, puzzle solving, and fighting enemies. Exploration is the part of the game that has been expanded the most in the remake. Throughout the game, we step into different parts of the city, from the foggy streets of Silent Hill itself to a hospital that doesn't look like a place to heal people, or a terrifying prison that has such a terrifying atmosphere that in one of its cells, I subconsciously imagined what the conditions of the people imprisoned in this place were like. Silent Hill 2's gameplay can be divided into 3 main pillars: exploration, puzzle solving, and fighting enemies. Exploration is the part of the game that has been expanded the most in the remake. Throughout the game, we step into different parts of the city, from the foggy streets of Silent Hill itself to a hospital that doesn't look like a place to heal people, or a terrifying prison that has such a terrifying atmosphere that in one of its cells, I subconsciously imagined what the conditions of the people imprisoned in this place were like. What makes this exploration even more enjoyable is the very appropriate design of the game maps. James gradually completes the map by exploring the environments. For example, if you find a note that refers to a specific room, a question mark will appear on the map, or if you get the password to a lock, James will write it down on the map. Of course, Silent Hill 2 has not been made to be easier at all, and the game will not give you the answer even if you spend several hours solving a puzzle. Rather, it simply writes down everything you find with difficulty so that the gamer no longer needs the paper and pen that were always with us when we experienced the original version, although I still had to resort to this method to solve some puzzles. I mentioned the puzzles, which are another element of the overall process of Silent Hill 2. We have to admit that these days, in the fully commercialized video game industry, it was not at all unlikely that a work like Silent Hill 2 would undergo changes in the process of being rebuilt, in the direction of becoming simpler and even more action-packed, exactly what happened to the Resident Evil 3 remake, where many of the puzzles of the original version were removed. But fortunately, this is not the case with Silent Hill 2, and the game's memorable puzzles still have a strong presence in it and can really challenge gamers. The puzzles are both very cleverly designed and very well connected to the exploration aspect of the game. To solve most of the puzzles, you need to find the clues or items you need by exploring the environments, which is what keeps these more extensive explorations from becoming repetitive and boring compared to the original. The aspect of Silent Hill 2 that has improved the most over the original, and that I also have a slight complaint about, is the combat mechanics. In the original game, we had a generally stiff and uninteresting combat system, partly to instill fear and partly due to James' own inexperience with combat. Of course, the limitations of the hardware certainly played a role in this. Now, however, we have a completely modern combat system that makes fighting with both cold and firearms more natural and engaging. Silent Hill 2's enemies have retained their old-school originality, and thanks to the game's high-quality graphics, they are several levels scarier than ever. When the game's doll-shaped enemies charge at you or those famous nurses appear from the darkness, they create a chilling feeling in the audience that doesn't get normal even with the passage of time. This also applies to the game's bosses, who are topped by the famous Pyramid Head, and his design is done in the scariest way possible. But the complaint we mentioned is related to some bugs in the game's combat system. Especially when you face enemies in narrow corridors or relatively small environments, the game's camera may find strange conditions, and you may easily lose James or the enemy for a few seconds. This will cause you a lot of trouble, especially if you are facing more than one enemy, and you will probably have to go for health restoration items after such a battle. I also mentioned items, and it is worth saying that Silent Hill 2 in general sometimes appears a little generous in giving arrows and other items, but rest assured that some game scenarios will have a special plan for your seemingly abundant ammunition. With all these positive features that we have discussed in detail, if I had to choose just one main strength for Silent Hill 2, it would undoubtedly be its amazing and extremely scary atmosphere. Created by Bloober Studio, it has understood all the original and pure fear of the original version of the game and recreated it in its own creation in the best possible way. Silent Hill 2 also has simpler aspects of fear. For example, some enemies lurk in corners where you do not expect them and surprise the audience in the worst possible way. But the game is not satisfied with this, and beyond that, it also offers the psychological fear of Silent Hill. This psychological fear has made you feel as if a creature that is not even supposed to be seen is chasing you throughout the entire game experience, and does not leave you alone for a moment. This creature may be the suffocating atmosphere that prevails throughout the game and shows itself in the same way in every environment. For example, the foggy atmosphere of the city itself is scary in one way, and the dark, rusty, and sometimes blood-stained corridors of some interior environments are also scary in another way. The game's eye-catching graphics and its accurate depictions of such spaces certainly play an important role in this, but beyond the visual aspects, I think the music and sound are the main factors that make Silent Hill 2 scary. Akira Yamaoka, the composer of the original Silent Hill 2, is back for the remake, and he shows off his talent for creating top-notch music. The game's music is a combination of famous original pieces with a series of new songs, all of which have one thing in common: they fit perfectly with the atmosphere that the gamer experiences in the game. Akira Yamaoka, the composer of the original Silent Hill 2, is back for the remake, and he shows off his talent for creating top-notch music. The game's music is a combination of famous original pieces with a series of new songs, all of which have one thing in common: they fit perfectly with the atmosphere that the gamer experiences in the game. Silent Hill 2 Remake was made with the Unreal Engine 5, and from the very first shot where we see James next to the car and before entering the city itself, it becomes clear what eye-catching graphics we are dealing with. Especially the environmental designs are very detailed, and apart from the high quality of the textures themselves, the proper use of lighting plays a prominent role in them. The character facial designs are also in a good condition, and overall, we see high visual quality. Of course, although Silent Hill 2 is more optimized than some other Blu-ray productions such as the game Medium, it still has a strange sudden frame drop in some specific environments, and the problem is fixed immediately after leaving that environment. This problem will probably be fixed over time with future updates. All of this to conclude that Silent Hill 2 Remake is a work that can be a first-class experience for both longtime fans of the series and those who are trying it for the first time. With exemplary loyalty to one of the best horror genres and expanding it in a suitable way, Bloober Studio has created an experience that is both scary, has a very good story, and is successful in terms of gameplay. So let me repeat it once again: Silent Hill 2 Remake is a good remake, a scary work, and a video game worthy of admiration that is recommended to all horror fans. Silent Hill 2 Remake is a work that can be a first-class experience for both longtime fans of the series and those who are trying it for the first time. With exemplary loyalty to one of the best horror genres and expanding it in a suitable way, Bloober Studio has created an experience that is both scary, has a very good story, and is successful in terms of gameplay. So let me repeat it once again: Silent Hill 2 Remake is a good remake, a scary work, and a video game worthy of admiration that is recommended to all horror fans.